Hello, friends. How are you? How's things? How's life? How's how's things? How's life? Um, Look at this. You guys remember this? I know a lot of new people watching these videos don't know what this is, but this is probably my favorite thing that happened at Gen Con. This is a game that I started developing 4 years ago, I'm gonna guess. 21, I think. This is Rival Rails. This is a prototype of Rival Rails. This is not a completed product at this point. The last time I worked on this game was in 2023. Right around this time, 2023. So 2 years ago is the last time I've opened this box and I've looked at this game and I've thought about this game. This particular copy I left in Germany. I went to Essen Spiele and I gave this to a publisher there to look over, and they ultimately rejected it, and that's fine. They rejected it for good reasons. They had good feedback. Well, they didn't have any feedback. Let me take that back. They had no feedback. But that no feedback is the feedback that I needed. For a while on this channel, for 2 years, I developed this game, and I talked about it constantly here. For the new people, Rival Rails is a two-player Cube Rails game, which is something that basically doesn't exist. If you've played Cube Rails games, or you've played 18xx as a two-player game, they suck. They're just not good. And people will argue, and that's fine. Like, if you enjoy playing two-player stock market games, go for it. But personally, I think that they're broken right out of the box. If you're not playing a mirror strategy, there's no point in playing, because that's, it's a zero-sum game at that point. Additionally, if you are playing a mirror strategy, there's no point in playing. Like, that's the only viable way to play the game as a two-player game, and that's it. This attempted to fix that by using cards to drive your building. So instead of you being able to just build and buy whatever you want based on the company's available cash flow, you had a deck of cards. This is the board for Rival Rails that I designed. I did all the work on this. Design, development, everything. And it has one major problem that I don't like about this particular version, and that is that this commodity market, I called this a commodity market, was intended to be like the driving factor of why we're building these rails. Just like any Cube Rails games, you're putting cubes on a map. In this particular case, I used the little trains from Capstone because they're awesome, but ultimately, if I was to produce this, I couldn't afford to make these. I would use cubes because I can get those. Cubes on a map, building rail links. Why are you doing this? Well, in this version, in this two-player version, there's this commodity market. And this commodity market was my way of making it not a zero sum. Whereas, like, I have more shares, I get the money, you don't. In this, it is, you make a connection, and based on where the dice is on this track, it's like a push-pull mechanic on this track, is how much money you make for that connection. And maybe the answer is you don't make anything, but you take my ability away. You take me, you take away my incentives to build connections to these commodities. So the original idea was there's cities get placed on, or there's rail lines get placed, then there's cities that get placed. Cities are drawn out of a bag. There's, I think, 4 of each of the purple and pink, and then 6 of each of the other 2. So the idea was, as you get to these cities, you unlock these commodities, and now you can start selling them. Well, the problem is, in this setup, the commodities get more valuable over time. Like the complete opposite of how an economy works. In an economy, the commodities get cheaper over time because there's, anyway. But that makes for less interesting gameplay. If you start off the game and you're making $50 when you make a connection, and by the end of the game you're making $5, it feels anticlimactic. So one of the thoughts that I had was, well, step one is I'm just going to switch it back to the way I made that change. By the way, right before going to Essen, this always was a increasing commodity. So you made the money, and then right before going to Essen, I decided to switch it and say it starts off high and goes low as you make these connections because it better represents like how a market would work in this case. You as you develop into these areas and you gain more access to these resources or these commodities, then that equates to a lower overall price, whatever. So I'm switching that back around, and what I realized on the way back from the drive is why did I? These were always commodities. Why can't these be demand? So why aren't this particular city's looking for this? And so as I make this connection, I start making more money because as the rail baron, I can start shipping more goods, which means I make more money. Duh. So that's step one. So I'm fixing this game. In my head, on the way back from Gen Con, I had 6 hours in the car by myself. I really thought a lot about this game. I put so much work into it. I don't know that it comes across on camera. This is a very simplistic design, but this is so many hours of my life trying to make this look attractive, modern, without being garish. I worked really hard on the cards, trying to make them presentable and usable, making each rail company be unique and also somewhat sort of based on on real rail companies, but also set in kind of my state. This is kind of my state. This ultimately crashed and burned for a few reasons, and I think that commodity market was one of them. I should have never made that change. And number two, it still suffers the same problem that any two-player Rails game is going to suffer when there's a market involved. It becomes a zero sum. It becomes a I make money, you lose money, or you get what I'm saying. This version, there was a lot of bank involvement where you were taking money constantly. I removed all of that. I have an updated version of this sitting upstairs that I've never play tested. And I'm not going to play test it because I know it's not correct. It's closer. I added cards that you use to build rails also have abilities on them, which give you special bonuses, that sort of stuff. I added more of those. I added some kind of like a goals system so that there's something else to chase after. I'm also going to make the cities hidden. In the rules, I think in this version, the rules allow you to play with hidden cities or revealed cities, but the default is revealed cities. I'm going to make the default they're hidden. So you have no idea what you're getting when you go there. And I think that makes for much more interesting gameplay, much more interesting moments, if not a little bit more random. And maybe that's upsetting to some people, but I don't care. I enjoy the randomness, and I know that that's not a traditional cube rails. In a traditional cube rails game, you have pretty much perfect information. That's kind of impossible in a two-player game without making it that zero-sum game, and I don't want that. So the deck of cards is one way that it's automatically not a perfect information game, and so I think that having those cities flipped over means it's a little bit more of a race to find what you're looking for and to achieve what you're looking for without a whole bunch of foreknowledge, and I think it will just be a little bit more interesting. And I think that when that all happens, when I make these changes, I'm going to add these goals, I'm going to add the more powerful or more interesting cards in this deck, I'm going to make the board be random and hidden. I'm going to stop calling this a cube rails game. I don't think it's going to be correct for me to say I've invented, the fun. I've invented the two-player cube rails because ultimately at that point this is just a train game. It's not a cube rails. It's not. I don't want to have people look at it that way and say, well, "This isn't a cube rails." I can't plan my strategy. I'm not, tempting the market or whatever. Well, that's fine. It's not a cube rails game. It's a train-themed board game for two players, and I can't get it out of my head. I've been back from Gen Con for 3 weeks now, and I believe I'm just going to self-publish this. I think that I will find a way It might even be this sort of format where I just hand make the pieces that I can't purchase and ship it individually to people who want them. It'll be very expensive that way. But I want this in the world. I want people playing it, and I want to see if it has legs. Maybe I'll do a campaign. But the good news is, it's back in my head. I've taken lots of notes on it over the last 3 weeks. I'm ready to work on it again and to test it and to see where it goes. But there's just, there's a lot going on in my life right now, and I am choosing music over this. But the good news is this is like a background process. The vast majority of this work is already done. So it's really just refinement at this point. I need to refine it a little bit further before I'm willing to say it's as good as I'm going to make it and let it go into the world. So if you're excited about that, please let me know if you have questions, comments, or thoughts. Or are you aware of a good 2-player Cube Rails game? I'd love to try one. I've never found one that works well with 2 people. I think they all suck at 2-player. Let me know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're new here. We are dangerously close to getting back to 25,000 subscribers. I'd love to hit that number again, just to say we did it twice. Thank you. I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's 1,000 plus little things happy, successful people do differently. We are learning 15 things real friends do differently. Number 9, they support each other's growth changes. Our needs change with time. When someone says you've changed, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it just means you've grown. Don't apologize for it. Instead, be open and sincere. Explain how you feel and keep doing what you know and your heart is right. Yeah, it can become resentful when somebody makes a change that doesn't align with you, and it can break a friendship apart. And unfortunately, a lot of times that means maybe you weren't the friend you thought you were before. But it's also important to keep open to the idea that your friends are going to change, and that that's okay, and that you can still be friends. You just maybe have a different type of friendship coming out the other side of that.